Hi, my name is Mrill Ingram from the Michael Fields Agricultural Institute, where I'm a participatory action research scientist doing a project on cover cropping and using a citizen science model in order to gather on farm results and practices about cover cropping from farmers around the state. And I have that lengthy title because a lot of my work is involved in thinking about how people use data, how they can be supported in being more comfortable and in doing ongoing experiments and innovation, because of course farmers are very much on the front lines in terms of figuring out how to make cover crops work for them across very diverse contexts and systems. And depending on one's goals in cover cropping, of course, you're going to pursue different different strategies. So trying to be sensitive to all of that is a lot to think about. And there's a lot of wonderful projects gathering the much needed local data on cover crops. And this project in particular wants to engage with all of those in supporting by building a model about how to work with farmers where they're at, doing what they're doing, helping turn the results into actual shareable data, and helping kind of build a collaborative sense of trust about sharing information and kind of building a region-wide understanding of what it means to be cover cropping on fields today, with the weather ups and downs and costs of fertilizer ups and downs and other kinds of challenges. So we started this project called the Wisconsin Cover Crop Data Network in 2020, just after COVID shut things down. And we were beginning to think about the fact that as a group interested in cover cropping, we understood that a lot of folks didn't have the local information they needed. And that was in part from a survey done by Margaret Crome, who surveyed a bunch of agricultural educators all around the state and got 90 some answers. But it was very clear that, especially in certain parts like the north and western part of Wisconsin, but in general, there were a lot of people who were getting questions about cover cropping, but didn't always have the local information. So we were beginning to think about how to do a kind of crowdsourced information, source of information about this. And with COVID, realized, okay, we sort of have to do this because it's going to be hard to do in person anything. So we set up an online survey, and then Dan Smith of UW Extension's Nutrient and Pest Management program got himself out of the house and driving around all the state of Wisconsin in order to sample, I think, 15 to 20 farms that first year. So that was the beginning. But over time, we have now grown to 50 to 60 farmers a year, with about a 70, sometimes as much as a 70% return rate on those same farmers, who fill out a survey in the fall about a particular field they're cover cropping and the kind of practices they use. They give us cost information as well as the agronomics around things like seeding rates and fertility and stuff like that, tillage. They answer questions about their levels of satisfaction and sort of how they're learning and experimenting. And then they take samples. We send them a little kit, and they take their own samples and put them in pre-addressed bags. So in the end, we have data. And that is sort of the core of our project, in the sense that we've got all of this farmer-generated data to use. So I will zoom in here. I'm not quite sure how to drive. This is a little over my pay grade here. Okay, so we ended up with data from labs and results from farmers who filled out our survey, and which we had in the form of a CSV or an Excel file. And we started to work with Dave Evans of Evans Geospatial, who's not only a great coder and person familiar with data visualization, but also someone with a decent amount of domain knowledge as a person with a soil science degree. So that was really great in terms of thinking through all of the decisions that we had to make and kind of a way to visualize our data. So there was certainly a large amount of cleaning up data, bringing it together, creating categories, for instance, what to call certain species, how useful is a word like brassica, for example, how detailed do we need to be? And really through all of this, we were testing with participants and also thinking with a very farmer centered approach in terms of perhaps what maybe a agronomist or a researcher from a university might want to see. We were really focused on trying to both maintain a lot of context, which meant for messy data, because we had a lot of variables for every single field. But we heard very specifically that that is the kind of data story that really enables farmers to take data and put it into action because they know what went in order to get that result out in terms of biomass and forage quality and nutrients. And those are the three things that we test for. So looking at this, building the participatory dashboard, we have farmers sample. The lab analyzes for, as I say, biomass levels as well as forage and nutrient analyses. Those results are then all collated together in our database. And that database is then, individual reports go to the farmers, but those results are also made anonymous and made available through this dashboard, which you can visit kind of through that QR code that you see. It'll take you to what we're calling the scenario tool. But our database includes a map giving you the general location of participants, so you can kind of see the distribution around the state. There's also a graphing tool so that you can explore the data according to things like cover crop types, biomass, precipitation levels, the kind of growing degree units, which are really a way to measure the amount of warmth that a plant gets over a season. So we really tried to make the data visualized and explorable. We through focus group, we really did learn about how much of a fire hose all this information could be, and that is why we developed what we're calling the scenario tool. You can see in the upper right there's a screenshot of one result from the this scenario tool, and there are 6 scenarios: erosion, grazing for fall and spring, weed control, and nutrient management, both scavenging and also producing nitrogen. So you can select and then see what kind of farms around the state that met the requirements in terms of biomass or a certain nutrient content. What kinds of farms around the state got that result, and what they planted, when they planted it, how they planted it. And then the ROI, we're able to begin to estimate because we've got planting costs as well as that lab data. So not a perfect product at this point. We really like to think of this as kind of as a participatory process. It's we put it up in the last few months, and we're anxious to get it out on the road and to see what people think. But we heard so much about ROI, as well as the need for local data. So again, this is very different from a decision tool where you're going to get general recommendations. There's nothing general about this. The results are anonymous, but every single one of those results has a specific farmer and a specific story behind it. So looking at the numbers, we have over 220 fields sampled at this point. We're still going strong. So we're entering the 6th year, and we'll be able to get many more fields coming in this fall. We've got 45 counties covered, and many people come back, but a nice sort of influx of new people to diversify what we're learning. We really saw mostly the majority, sort of looks like about 64% of the fields sampled were multi-species grown, with of course covered with cereal rye being the main one used in single species. Critical agronomic insights are that both in northern as well as southern counties, farmers are frequently hitting biomass levels that are kind of at the threshold when you really begin to be able to suppress weeds and combat erosion, improve soil health, all that stuff. So 3,000 pounds an acre is what that comes out to. So that's just the beginning level. Frequently, people were hitting higher rates than that. And additionally, for forage quality, there's a RFQ, relative forage quality, of 150, which we saw many farms hitting as well. Or as one observer put it, there's decent food out there for variety of livestock. So that was both those results indicate the potential for cover crops used in different ways, as well as to do the job for erosion control. And this is all in a pretty interesting story about how Wisconsin farmers are continuing to innovate with cover cropping and developing kind of new ways of using the diversity of covers to lower costs of inputs. I think that's a big incentive right now, and also to be able to sort of do field management, handling stuff like severe flooding, and being able to get into fields. Certainly the droughts in sort of after kind of in the fall, extended fall dry periods, and those sort of things have delayed the growth of covers. But in general, except for 2022, in the last 5 years, people have seen really pretty good results. 2022 was a tough one. As I say, we are ongoing with this project. That barcode, sorry, QR code will take you to our scenario tool, so you can begin to kind of explore the results. And from there, you can see the other dashboards and learn about the project. And we're full up for 2025, but you can also fill out an interest form. And the last thing I want to say is that we also created a download ability from our platform, because we want to be able to share this data with people who are interested in it, who might be able to analyze it for patterns and that kind of thing. So that is collaborative work we're doing with other researchers around. And if that interests you too, you'll be able to see the process there as explained on that website. So thank you for the opportunity to share. I think this is a really interesting example of how a citizen science model can be used and expanded on to really think about collaborative work, and to really kind of think about how we can, as researchers and farmers, very much work together to produce data, and then turn it immediately back around into something actionable and usable. So thanks very much for listening.